A single trembling finger hovers over the buy button on a sleazy hypnosis app guide that promises the ideal girlfriend. He sits in class, cheeks burning as he scrolls his phone, admitting to himself that lately he has become utterly addicted to hypnosis app Manga. Fantasy girls in lingerie beckon from his imagination, their bodies offered up as he's told this power can force them to do anything he secretly craves. Slumped over his desk, he gloomily wishes a real hypnosis app existed so he could use it for shamelessly lewd things. His teacher calls his name with a stern stare, and he jerks upright in panic, pretending he was paying attention all along. As classmates snicker behind him, he hides in his textbook, sweating with mortified silence while their quiet laughs sting his pride. Clutching his head and screaming inside, he laments that the harsh real world keeps him painfully far from the paradise he dreams about. A heart-shaped hypnosis app loading on his phone mocks him as he insists that such a convenient power surely cannot exist. The classroom clock ticks toward the end of class, stretching the tense wait as his restless thoughts build. He watches Asaka Matsuri, the dazzling gal of the school, and admits that despite all her charms, something about her grabs his attention more than anything. His gaze locks on her chest, and he obsessively fixates on those massive breasts that dominate his thoughts. Smirking to himself, he praises her incredible figure in his mind, lost in lustful admiration. His friends Akira and Shogo lean in with teasing grins, accusing him of thinking about dirty stuff yet again. They crowd around him, pressing for details about what he imagined this time, while he nervously denies having anything specific in mind. Nearby girls gush over how sexy Asaka is, amplifying his embarrassment as his own desire mirrors their praise. Heart-pounding, he wonders in frustration why Asaka is always the first image that explodes into his mind at moments like this. A girl's voice gently asks what's wrong with him, pulling his attention back with a nervous jolt. Asaka steps closer with an easy smile, asking if he called her, while he stammers that nothing is wrong under his friend's stunned gaze. She laughs softly, saying she had been watching him without realizing, while acting like his flustered state simply amused her. He apologizes awkwardly, asking if he rudely broke into their conversation as sweat beads on his face. She waves off his apology with a bright smile, her friends echoing that it is fine as they warmly include him. Later, his friends note how considerate Asaka is, and he readily agrees while reflecting on her kindness toward them as well. Half-dazed, he wonders aloud what kind of guy could possibly be her boyfriend, given her popularity, style, and cuteness. His friend shrugs and says just sharing air with an otaku-friendly gal like her should already make them grateful. Hearing that, he drifts into a blissful daze, feeling as if he is floating through a fragrant field of flowers beside his buddies. His mind then floods with images of Asaka, and though he tries to stay calm, he admits he cannot resist wanting to do ever kinkier things with her. Snapped at by his friend for spacing out, he erupts in denial, insisting he is not daydreaming even as his face burns. Staring at his house, he berates himself as a horrible person for having such filthy fantasies about a genuinely nice girl. Dragging himself through the doorway, he calls out that he is back, exhausted and weighed down by guilt. His mother gratefully takes the groceries from him, thanking him and saying it eases her burden, while he politely answers that he will come down when dinner is ready. He lies sprawled on his bed, staring at the ceiling and muttering that he is graduating this year as the quiet room presses in on him. Eyes vacant, he admits that always daydreaming and doing nothing will let youth slip past him forever. Curling into his pillow, he forces a bitter laugh and says it is only natural he does not have a girlfriend. Tears streaming down his blank face, he gloomily decides he might as well escape into Manga again. Suddenly jolting upright with a scream, he gapes at his phone and demands to know what he is seeing. His fingers shake as he zooms in on the heart icon and shouts in disbelief that a hypnosis application has appeared on his screen. Collapsed on the mattress and panting, he hugs the phone to his chest while begging himself to calm down. Sweat beading, he stares uneasily at the display and whispers that he never downloaded something this sketchy. Reading the ornate description, he tells himself this has to be fake even as a reckless but claws at his thoughts. Face flushing and eyes wild, he pants that such power is far too tempting for any man to resist. From behind the door, he hurriedly asks his big sister to spare him a moment, and she casually agrees. She keeps writing with an annoyed frown, saying she almost hit him for yelling earlier and demanding to know what his problem is. Feeling her silent pressure even without her gaze, he stammers a scared apology yet swears inside he will not back down. He recalls how his petite-looking sister, who cheerfully threatens to kill him once, actually radiates the intensity of a terrifying high schooler. In his mind, he pictures her easily dragging his bound body across the ground, admitting he would have a 1 in a million chance in any real fight. Tucking hair behind her ear, she says she has pushed some work ahead and calmly invites him to talk if he needs her. Forcing a shaky smile, he thanks her while sweating at the thought that if she discovers he is testing a hypnosis app, he will not survive unscathed. Heart pounding, he insists to himself that nothing should happen and nothing will happen, even as he steels himself in front of her. Pointing the phone at her, he claims he is just checking because an ability like this cannot possibly be real. Watching her image on the screen, he gulps and repeats that a power this convenient simply cannot exist. Holding the phone out, he calls to her with a tentative, "Hey," and she turns back in mild confusion at being summoned. Breaking into a cold sweat, he mutters that this must be a joke while wondering in terror if she has actually fallen under hypnosis. With a serene blankness, she looks at him and obediently tells him to have her raise her right hand. She lifts her right arm straight up without hesitation, leaving him shocked as exclamation marks burst in his mind. Eyes narrowing with grim focus, he orders her to lower that hand while thinking he needs to push this further. Expressionless, she puckers her lips and mimics a kiss in the air the instant he commands it. Still vacant-eyed, she lifts her hands like rabbit ears on top of her head exactly as instructed. Turning around and spreading her stance in an absurd squat, she performs the Jifu pose just because he tells her to. Clutching his mouth, he shakes with hysterical laughter, thinking he might literally die seeing his tough sister frozen in such a ridiculous stance. Later, hiding under his blanket and panting at the glowing screen, he mutters that it cannot be true yet keeps asking if his sister really fell into hypnosis. Staring at the heart icon, he realizes that if his sister ever remembers those humiliating poses he forced on her, she would never forgive him and he might as well be dead. Sweat dripping and eyes shining, he thinks that if this hypnosis app is truly genuine, everything in his life has just changed. His mind floods with indecent visions of mature women smothering him from all sides, and he whispers that such impossible pleasures would become attainable. Grinning manically under the blanket, he decides that tomorrow he will test whether anyone else can be dragged into hypnosis. Walking outside with flushed cheeks and his phone ready, he steels himself and mutters that he first needs to find someone nearby. He pauses mid-step, lifting the phone as his gaze sharpens, sensing a potential test subject ahead. An elderly man shuffles toward him on a cane, and he fixates on him while thinking this frail stranger might be his chance. Face tightening with guilt and greed, he grips the phone and tells himself he could try the app on this old man. Addressing the man, he bluntly asks if the elder could run a little, disguising his experiment as an innocent request. Bones crack and joints scream as the old man suddenly straightens and moves, making the boy wince at the horrible sound. Panicking at the sight, he rushes forward shouting for him to stop before he hurts himself, while the confused grandpa asks what is going on. The elder stares in shock at his own body, gasping that he is somehow standing tall without his cane. Kneeling beside him, the boy anxiously supports the wincing man, who groans in pain as he comes back to his senses. The abandoned cane lies on the ground while the old man admits his memory is hazy. With a gentle smile, the elder insists that whatever happened must be thanks to the boy and offers heartfelt gratitude. Turning away with a strained expression, the boy reminds himself he chose to become a villain so he should not be crushed by guilt. Later in town, he walks and silently reviews his experiments, concluding the app can control up to 3 people at once but forces him to release earlier targets first. Staring at his phone as he passes a woman, he murmurs that he is finally starting to grasp how this power works. His eyes lock on the voluptuous stranger's chest, and he burns with shame as he thinks those huge, provocative masses are begging to be touched. Peeking from his hiding place, he calls out politely for the woman to come closer, masking his lust with a courteous tone. As she steps into the narrow alley and towers over him, his heart thunders and he silently curses that this situation is spiraling. His pupils tremble and sweat beads on his brow as he admits to himself he is terrified by what he is about to do. Facing her in the tight passage, he reaches a shaking hand toward her chest while ordering himself to calm down. His fingers slide toward her cleavage as he urges himself to abandon restraint and obey his darkest desires. Trying to stall with small talk, he asks if she is heading somewhere, prompting her to mention she is on the way to her sister's piano concert. Glancing at the bouquet in her hands, he confirms the flowers are meant for her sister, feeling his conscience twist. Abruptly backing off, he waves and says she should definitely hurry there, apologizing breathlessly for stopping her. Walking away afterward, he clutches his chest and groans that he has just done something awful to that girl, then frantically denies it to himself. He scowls at his own weakness, reminding himself that he vowed to be evil and indulge every whim, yet still curses his hesitation. Spotting Asaka alone ahead, he notices how different and strangely subdued her aura feels without her friends and wonders if her isolation is what makes her seem so unfamiliar. He stares at his phone with glazed eyes and a twisted grin, vowing to use the Hypnosis app to plunge into Asaka's voluptuous chest, no matter how wrong it feels. Outside the school, his resolve hardens as he silently decrees that tomorrow after classes will be the moment of execution. The morning sun rises over the school roof as if calmly blessing a day he secretly plans to corrupt. Asaka greets him cheerfully in class with a bright good morning, while he forces a normal reply even as his guilty plan churns underneath. Sweating and smirking darkly to himself, he decides he will become an adult by abusing this Hypnosis app to do absolutely anything he wants. As the classroom empties and friends call their goodbyes to Matsuri, narration declares that the long-awaited after-school time has finally arrived. He lurks behind a wall, watching Asaka with her friends, nerves tightening as he waits for his chance, and she falls silent in the chatter. When her friend invites her to hang out, Asaka laughs apologetically and says she has something else to do, leaving her friends puzzled. He stiffly asks if Asaka has any plans today, anxiety leaking through his attempt at casual curiosity. From down the corridor she walks away, and his thoughts answer that she does not mind, leaving his opportunity wide open. Her name is called sharply from off-panel, cutting through the empty hallway like a last warning. She turns back with a soft smile, asking what is wrong as she notices Masaki holding up his phone with forced nonchalance. Looking up at him with trusting eyes, she answers that it is fine and tells him to go as he awkwardly asks if he can come to her house now. Their shoes are neatly left at the entrance as they step barefoot into the quiet home, the intimacy of being alone settling on them. A doorway looms ahead, while a nervous voice explains this is her room, inviting him into her private space. He steps inside, overwhelmed by the cute decor and soft scent, realizing with a flush that this undeniably girlish room belongs to Asaka. After some small talk reveals her parents return late, he stares at her racing heartbeat and thinks everything is perfectly arranged for him to do whatever he wants to her. Facing her with a tense expression, he orders her to take off her sweater, testing how far this unnatural obedience will go. Her hands calmly move to her buttons as she says it is okay, the quiet consent making his pulse pound louder. Struggling to speak, he asks if she can unbutton the rest while she gazes at him steadily, the air thick with expectation. As her blouse parts and lacy bra spills into view, he trembles and mentally screams that he actually said those shameless words. She stands before him in only her bra and skirt, and he can only whisper her name, stunned by how serenely she offers herself. He flails and howls in overjoyed disbelief, calling the sight spectacular while she stands there shyly exposed. Drooling and flushed, he steels himself and decides it is time to finally see those enormous breasts he has obsessed over. Leaning close with half-lidded eyes, she answers yes while he bluntly commands her to show him her breasts. When she moves, something unexpected flashes on her skin, and he recoils in shock, stammering as his excitement shatters. His gaze locks on a mark near her arm, and his thoughts seize on that scar, dread drowning out lust. Looking at her expressionless face, he wonders in horror if she might have cut herself, the possibility pounding in his chest. From above, he stares down at her sitting on the bed and mutters that there is no way, asking why a girl like her would do that. As she waits obediently in her underwear, he battles himself, thinking he has a compliant girl right in front of him, yet questioning why he suddenly cannot move forward. He stares at her in his mind and admits that after noticing that scar he can't stay emotionally detached anymore, while her silent eyes only deepen his unease. Clutching the glowing phone, he reminds himself that if she's hypnotized, then she's his puppet and will answer anything he dares to ask. He finally forces the question out, asking in a tight voice how she got the scar on her arm as she looks back with calm, unreadable eyes. Her voice turns distant as she recalls having a boyfriend, smiling in an old photo while he casually urges her to snap the shot. Standing in her underwear, she explains that he was a childhood friend who fit perfectly into her family and filled their days with easy fun. At a graduation gate, she remembers believing they could stay together even after starting to date in middle school and heading to different high schools. Lowering her head, she lets a trembling but fall from her lips as the happy memory twists into something sour. She confesses that only she still felt that way, because he had already lost all feelings for her. Hands gripping her skirt, she reveals he secretly started going out with a girl from his own high school. She describes confronting him about cheating, her angry words bouncing off the couple standing before her. In that memory, he only shrugs her off with a smile, treating her outrage as nothing. On the train platform, he coldly tells her he no longer cares and that being with her was boring, while his new girlfriend stands at his side. Her eye widens in horror as she remembers him saying those lines with his mouth pressed against the other girl's lips. Back in the room, her teary gaze lifts as she hesitantly asks if that is all he wants to know. She admits the cheating hurt, of course, but says the real wound went deeper. Alone on a dark slope facing her parents' backs, she recounts how he twisted stories until they sided with him and were taken from her too. Listening, he can only whisper why everything around her had to fall apart so cruelly. Sitting across from her parents in that memory, she explains that because they liked him so much, they chose to believe his version. Their reproach echoes in her mind as they tell her it was her fault for not understanding his feelings. Her eye fills with tears as she says that before she knew it, she was completely alone and had no idea what to do. She answers that the scar came from that time, explaining it wasn't a wish to die, just that the pain strangely eased what she felt inside. Looking down at her bandaged arm, he murmurs that he understands now and wonders if the unease he sensed when he saw her on the street came from this burden. His gaze shifts to a cheerful photo on her shelf as he tells her she's amazing, and her eye trembles at the unexpected praise. Kneeling before her half-naked form, he admits he never noticed because she always seemed so bright and happy, leaving her speechless. He tells her she's the kind who cares for everyone and keeps smiling strong despite everything, so no one realizes how much she's endured. Exhaling, he closes his eyes and firmly orders her to put her clothes back on. He then faces her seriously, saying he knows his apology means little after abusing hypnosis to see her naked and that he has no right to lecture her. He insists that despite what she believes, she isn't alone because she's loved, popular, and surrounded by friends who cherish her. Her expression softens as she quietly echoes his words, asking if he really thinks she has all that. Squaring his shoulders, he tells her that while her family mess is complicated, she should throw that cheating guy out of her heart completely. Her eyes harden above her exposed scar as he tells her there is no reason to keep torturing herself over that trash. He stands outside a quiet house, staring up in speechless hesitation as the weight of what he must do sinks in. Smirking with forced bravado and phone in hand, he decides Asaka is special and vows to hunt some other girl instead. His smile fades as he eyes a photo of the cheating couple on his screen and admits to himself there is something he has to do first. He watches from a distance as the ex-boyfriend strolls down the alley with his new girl clinging to his side. Peering from behind the wall, he recognizes them while the couple laughs about sending that photo and mocking what Asaka's face must have looked like when she saw it. Clutching his chest in the darkness, he realizes the app has made him cocky and calls himself a fool for thinking he could play God. He plants his feet and calls out "Hey," making the couple turn in annoyed surprise at the interruption. Jaw tight, he orders them to move aside while the ex glares back and demands to know who the hell he is. Facing them squarely in the open space, he resolves to deliver a punishment they will truly feel, no matter the cost. Sweating but steady, he asks if they know Asaka Matsuri, letting her name hang like an accusation between them. The ex's lips curl as he describes her as the girl dumped by her crush, betrayed by her parents, and left a pathetic wreck. With a casual smile, he asks if Matsuri ran to this stranger to cry, insisting nothing can change anything now anyway. Teeth grinding, the boy glares and thinks that this smug bastard is beyond forgiveness. He snaps that Asaka suffered terribly, but the ex only shrugs, saying he hates troublesome girls like her. Grinning, the ex admits he probably made her cry a lot and boasts that breaking her again would be easy. A flat voice cuts in and calls him a real scumbag, stripping away the last of his swagger. Face twisting, the ex leans closer and growls for him to repeat that insult if he has the guts. Grabbing his shirt, the boy shouts that she cut her own arm and demands to know if the ex even realizes what he drove her to. Eyes blazing, he yells that she was so cornered she hurt herself, while the ex sneers back asking if this brat plans to lecture him. The ex explodes with rage, smashing his fist into the boy's face and screaming that he is the asshole here. Crushed on the ground and staring at the app icon, he groans in pain and wonders why he is risking everything like this. As the couple turns to leave with a bored, "Let's go," his voice shakes from behind them, ordering them to wait. Fingers tightening around his phone, he silently readies the hypnosis that will decide their fate. They both glance back in confusion as he commands them to stop, the sudden stillness prickling with unease. Holding up the phone, he coldly says the app worked and orders the ex to confess every vile thing he did to Asaka to her parents. A dark smile tugs at his lips as he adds there is something else he wants from this piece of trash. Outside a school building, distant voices urge someone to look at a viral spectacle spreading through the halls. Two girls huddle over a screen, whispering that the idiot in the video seems to attend a nearby school. On a trending clip titled "Escaping Live," they gawk at the ex sprinting half-naked from a chasing car, while commenters jeer that he will definitely be expelled in utter humiliation. He slouches alone at his desk, shoulders shaking with a sinister chuckle while girls chat obliviously nearby. Propping his chin on his hands, he smugly muses that his command was perfectly obeyed and that making the ex run in his underwear was cruel even for him. Face hardening, he broods that since the bastard hit him first, an equal punishment was only fair, just as a classmate greets him with a casual "good morning," Masaki-kun. Asaka waves with a gentle smile, and her simple greeting stirs a heavy mix of guilt and warmth in him. Caught off guard as she approaches his desk, he fumbles out a stiff good morning while she stands close and unreadable. Leaning toward him with worried eyes, she softly asks what's wrong, her concern tightening the knot in his chest. Flustered and sweating, he jerks upright with a forced grin and insists it is nothing, begging her not to worry. Turning away with a troubled profile, he realizes his racing pulse must be because he saw her completely naked yesterday. Across the room, she pats her messy hair in embarrassment, thinking about her ruined hairstyle while her own narration admits her heart is pounding too fast. From his seat, he watches her laughing with friends, thinking she looks like the same bright Asaka as always, yet wondering anxiously what happened afterward. Resting his cheek on his hand, he silently hopes she is at least feeling a bit better, worry dulling his usual lust. Staring at the heart-shaped icon on his phone, he resolves to use the Hypnosis app at lunch to ask her directly, only to be jolted as a friend teases him about his red face. His buddies crowd around with lewd grins, one asking if he is in heat while he explodes, blushing and yelling at them to shut up. The classroom clock ticks toward noon, each second stretching his impatience and dread. Later, with curtains drawn and hearts thudding in the dim, he faces Asaka in an empty classroom and groans at how dangerously intimate this setup is. Seeing her standing quietly in that closed room, he clutches his head and squeals that the whole scene feels ripped straight from a manga. He imagines every cliché at once: teachers barging in, things turning erotic, and pictures it as the ultimate "suddenly the teacher appears" situation. Watching her step closer, he wipes at his sweat and tells himself he has to ask quickly before the moment slips away. Voice tight, he calls her name and asks if she can tell him what happened after that painful night. Expression dim, she explains that her ex suddenly turned up at her house out of nowhere. In her memory, he bows low beside another figure, confessing everything while her parents stare down in stunned silence. She recalls how her parents finally realized she was not at fault and, facing her directly, offered an apology. Looking straight at him now, she says she heard at school that the ex had been arrested, admits she doesn't know why he did it, yet confesses the news strangely brought her relief. With her eyes hidden by bangs, she admits in a shaky voice that she still cannot forgive her parents because they never believed her. He listens with a sober face and replies that he understands, thinking to himself that wounds like that cannot heal so easily. Nervously licking his lips, he asks if he can see her arm, bracing for what he might find. Seeing only the old bandage and no fresh cuts, he exhales in relief, thinking thank goodness there are no new injuries. Sweat trickling down his temple, he starts to remind her she probably does not remember what he did under hypnosis. Facing her earnestly, he says he does not want her getting hurt anymore because of that guy, and begs her to please look after herself. Flustered by his own intensity, he laughs weakly, blurts that he must be spouting nonsense, and still pleads that she must never do something like that to herself again. He narrows his eyes with a nervous sweat, instantly suspecting that her reaction doesn't quite add up. Collapsing in flustered agony, he babbles that Asaka's big chest and cute smile are his reward for logging in, then winces at how insane he sounds even as he vows he doesn't want a girl like her to vanish from forcing herself. Her shaded face tilts down as she quietly asks if he really wants her to just disappear. Standing at the front with awkward shrugging hands, he insists he doesn't want that at all, adding that while he's not in love, her morning smile is a lifesaver. Blushing like a drunk and sweating bullets, he rants that Asaka is cute and confesses he desperately wants to touch her at least once. His gaze crashes onto the lace-framed swell of her breasts, and he curses himself for only managing a pathetic niso pie when faced with them. As her hand suddenly reaches toward him, he jerks back in shock, stammering her name in panic. He topples backward onto the floor with a thud while she rises over him, leaving him stunned and exposed. Leaning over his fallen body with a heavy gaze, she calmly offers herself up, saying he can touch her as his mind explodes at what feels like the perfect answer. Hovering inches above him, she smiles softly while his heart hammers out of control, realizing that at this distance her presence is overwhelmingly intense. He stretches out a trembling hand, screaming at himself not to chicken out and raging over how long he'll keep being a coward even as he nearly reaches her. Sprawled beside her, he groans that having this hypnosis app yet hesitating is like clutching a treasure he's too afraid to use. Her flushed, lewd expression fills his imagination as he admits he's had some nice moments but still craves far more. Hands laced behind his head, he sighs that in the end all he can really do is hypnotize people. Lying back and staring up, he suddenly remembers there's a feature he still hasn't tested. Reading the screen that explains the hypnosis reserve mode, he decides to try this delayed activation function for himself. Her eyes fill the frame as he quietly calls Asaka's name, ready to bind her again. His command hangs in an empty bubble, ordering her to return to this place tomorrow at noon. Narration explains he has been summoning her here every day with the standby mode, which automatically triggers hypnosis the moment she arrives. He sinks blissfully into her soft chest, mind reeling as he realizes he actually managed to bury himself between Asaka's breasts. Pressed against her curves, he rationalizes that if he can't bring himself to touch her, he'll just order her to come to him instead, convincing himself this way his conscience can still endure it. Nestled against her, he exhales a satisfied thank you, and mutters that any guy who hurt a girl like Asaka must be a complete bastard. Then, with a strained laugh and burning cheeks, he admits he's even worse for hypnotizing her and using her body however he pleases. Facing each other in the empty room, she quietly insists that Masaki-kun helped her, while he awkwardly protests that what he did can't really be called help. The classroom clock creeps toward the hour, reminding them that their stolen break is about to end. Looking up with a composed face, he tells her the recess is nearly over and politely sends her back to class ahead of him. Expression blank under her bangs, she answers that she understands and prepares to obey. As he stands alone, collecting himself, she slips out into the hall, yet sneaks a quick, secret glance back at him from the doorway. The next morning he cheerfully heads out with a casual "I'm leaving," the peaceful house and gentle breeze belying his twisted routine. Striding towards school with a refreshed smile, he admits he once dragged himself there lazily, but now that he has something forbidden to anticipate, even ordinary days feel completely transformed. He thinks about abandoning her as a target, but when Asaka softly offers to hug him tighter, he can only curse that she's just too overwhelmingly good. Walking under falling petals, he forces a grin and mutters that having too many desirable girls to choose from is its own kind of cruel luxury dilemma. His eyes drift to Imu Hanma's reserved figure and narration coolly lists her assets: great body, refined aura, quiet popularity, while admitting she lacks Asaka's flash. The focus drops to her stiff uniform as text brands her the Ice Queen, a girl notorious for ruthlessly shooting down confessions. Watching another boy stammer out a love confession only to be dismissed as absurd and a waste of time, he hears that yet another sophomore has just been crushed. She shoots him a sharp sideways glare as she turns away, and the sudden eye contact makes his body jolt with a sweaty exclamation. In his mind, she becomes a frosty goddess surrounded by swirling snow, and even as he shakes in fear, he insists he doesn't care about her icy reputation. That fantasy strips her down to seductive lingerie, and he vows that someday he'll make this untouchable queen submit completely to his desires. Strutting past her with arms folded and cheeks puffed, he smugly tells himself to just wait and see, while she answers only with a flat ellipsis. Dropping into his seat later, he nervously wonders what outrageous thing he should make Asaka do today when someone suddenly calls his name. Looking down at him from above, Asaka calmly asks if she can talk for a moment, her serious gaze pinning him in place. Heart pounding loud enough to feel, he stares up in shock, reeling that Asaka is actually initiating a conversation with him for the first time. Sweat trickles down his neck as he convinces himself she must have something important to say, even though he sees no reason Asaka would ever single him out. His gaze snaps to the heart-shaped icon on his phone, and he panics that the only explanation he can imagine is the Hypnosis app. Floating alone at his desk in a warped void, he frantically replays yesterday, insisting the app's power should be absolute, while wondering if he did anything to draw suspicion. Her face looms in blackness as he quakes inside, asking if it's possible she actually remembered everything that happened under hypnosis. His imagination throws him onto a stage wearing a shameful sign while she coldly calls him disgusting, and the crowd hisses that he's garbage if she ever exposes him. A teacher's voice calls Masaki-kun, snapping him back as he curses under his breath, deciding there's no point spiraling further and forcing himself to answer that he'll be right there. Close on a name tag, he mumbles an apology, bracing for judgment that never comes. Walking the hall beside Asaka instead, he admits he forgot he was on duty and thanks her for calling him, while she smiles and assures him it's totally fine. Once she's gone, he wipes cold sweat and thinks how terrified he was, relieved it was only a false alarm, and knowing exposure would mean more than just expulsion. With a bliss-drunk smile and flushed cheeks, he concludes he simply has to wield the Hypnosis app more carefully from now on. Then she stops him again, gazing up from beneath her lashes and shyly asking whether anyone has ever told him his voice is soothing. He freezes, staring at her blushing silence in confusion as he lets out a hesitant "huh." Suddenly flustered, she bursts out an apology, reddening as she insists she just blurted something strange without thinking. Still pink-cheeked, she tells him not to worry about it, though her downcast eyes and nerves betray how rattled she is. Watching her avert her gaze, he stammers her name and wonders why she's suddenly wearing such an adorable expression, mind screaming that she's way too cute. They part in the corridor with awkward smiles, him wishing her a nice day while she answers with a polite yes. The camera lingers on her soft smile as she adds a gentle, "you too," sending a warm sting straight through his guilty heart. A classroom clock ticks toward noon again, silently counting down to whatever dangerous rendezvous he'll stage next. On the chairs behind the curtain, he sits stiff while Asaka snuggles into his side, the word "and" hanging like a loaded trigger. He squirms red-faced as hypnotized Asaka mashes his arm into her breasts, narration taunting that the worst and most irresistible moment of his day has arrived. Sweat trickling, he pulls a warped grin as he admits to himself that if Asaka ever saw this, she would be utterly appalled. His eyes fall to her cleavage and the glowing app in his hand as he realizes it is no longer just about her hating him but about something far worse. Even as her soft body rubs against him, he leans into her with a shameful smile and mutters that he is too much of a bastard to stop. He glances sideways at her blank, flushed face resting on his shoulder, the silent weight of what he is doing finally prickling his conscience. In the sparkling dark, his unseen voice asks Asaka what she thinks of being summoned here and forced into this. With her eyes hidden, she quietly answers that she actually likes this kind of relationship. Looking up with calm honesty, she says Masaki-kun's voice soothes her. Panicking and waving his hands, he stammers objections while she insists she knows his kindness and consideration are real. She leans in close, gaze unwavering, and says she believes him because his words always feel genuinely sincere. Watching him from above with a small frown, she hesitantly asks if he truly means everything he just said. Clutching his head in a storm of question marks, he screams inside that he has no idea how to respond to this bomb she dropped on him. Turning away in flustered retreat, he blurts out anyway and asks if their arrangement bothers her, only for her to answer flatly that it doesn't. From off-panel, he orders her to head back to the living room, and her obedient "I understand" echoes as the door rattles shut. Staring at his phone in the hallway, he gulps that her reaction blindsided him but also means he can still hypnotize Asaka without issues. Smiling warmly as she hands over a pen, she says there and offers to handle the rest of the work herself. When he protests that he has his own pen, she brushes it off and urges him to just use hers. Beaming with soft blushes and flower doodles around her, she thanks him while he mumbles a flustered "ah, thanks." Watching her cheerfulness with a nervous sweat, he notes that Asaka seems unusually upbeat today and cannot figure out why. She gently calls him out for suddenly looking away, warning he might hurt someone's feelings and asking with a smile what is troubling him. Blushing as he stammers that he was just looking, she laughs tenderly and says, "I see," her radiance leaving him weak. Expression deadpan, he mentally salutes every guy who has misread that same smile, admitting that men are built to get the wrong idea. Leaving the teacher's lounge with a farewell to go home safely, he shuffles into the empty corridor, tired but alone. From behind, Asaka calls his name, making him jump and turn in surprise. Facing him with a serious softness, she points out that it is just the two of them, and asks him to come with her to the shoe lockers. Heart exploding, he half threatens to hypnotize her while she admits she has been enduring these feelings, and he begs her not to say things like that to him now. His blood runs cold as he sees his phone flashing that only 5% battery remains. Noticing his panic, she asks if something is wrong, but he forces a laugh and insists it is nothing. Collapsing in his room later, he bawls that he cannot do anything with a dead phone, cursing himself and vowing to remember the charger tomorrow. He strolls beneath the cherry blossoms, lost in thought, unaware his peaceful walk is about to be ambushed. Asaka suddenly pokes his cheek with a bright "good morning, Masaki-kun," shattering his daze and freezing his face in stunned confusion. He jerks back with a yell of Asaka as she beams up at him, her surprise attack throwing his composure into chaos. She leans in asking if she startled him, while he sputters that of course she did, accusing her of popping up like some rom-com heroine. Laughing with closed eyes, she apologizes between giggles, even as his inner voice insists anyone would be upset by a shock like that. Her friends greet her with cheerful good mornings and she answers lightly while he watches from below, feeling the gap between her world and his. The girls chat that Masaki-kun's handwriting is really nice, and Asaka agrees with easy "yes, yes," while another admits she never knew. Surrounded by their smiles, he sweats and mutters that his handwriting is actually bad as they wonder if it reflects personality, while his thoughts scream that he hasn't even used the Hypnosis app today and still ended up walking to school in a flock of girls. His guy friends eye the scene from a distance and ask if something's wrong with him, while he broods that this popularity obviously isn't something he legitimately earned. Shuffling beside Asaka and her friend, he stammers, "Well, it's just that," unable to voice the guilt tightening his chest. Off-screen, his thoughts admit he feels bad monopolizing Asaka, because a whole crowd of her friends trails behind them. With a calm smile, she says it has nothing to do with that she only wants to talk to people she enjoys and has no interest in those who judge her, flipping his guilt into raw confusion. Watching the back of her head, he thinks she's clearly not lying and recalls how cheerful she seemed yesterday, yet he still cannot grasp why she likes being with him at all. She bounces a step closer and calls, "Masaki-kun, come here," while he awkwardly thanks her and panics inside, feeling them grow closer even without the app yet having no idea how to handle it. Walking in a small group, he trails at her side and decides that as long as Asaka genuinely enjoys his company, he has no right to complain about this fragile happiness. Blushing as she glances back and softly asks, "Right, Masaki-kun?" She quietly seeks his agreement while his heart ricochets in his chest. As he walks off alone with his pulse hammering, narration admits that no matter how many hearts he might have, this sweetness is simply too much pressure for him to bear. Elsewhere, a different boy sits slumped on his bed scrolling through mocking comments about some panty incident, each line of ridicule carving deeper into his humiliation. In a burst of rage, he snatches up his phone and smashes it against the wall, the crack exploding louder than his bottled-up shame. Kneeling forward with wild eyes, he screams for the unseen tormentor to speak their wish, as if demanding the world justify this suffering. Jaw clenched and pupils burning, he growls, "Why do I have to go through this?" choking on a mix of fury and wounded pride. Back in class, Masaki slumps over his desk, thinking he hasn't bought any Hypnosis app manga lately, the once obsessive fantasy now replaced by heavier, real problems. His mind drifts to a sultry vision of Asaka, beckoning him closer, and he smugly decides it's only natural, his manga cravings faded now that he has such pleasures in real life. A stern teacher looms over him asking if class is that entertaining, then coldly orders him to answer a question, yanking him out of the daydream in icy embarrassment. Later in the hallway, a friend teases that he got scolded again and presses what he had been thinking about this time, while Masaki's shoulders slump under the accurate jab. Flustered, he blurts that he was just reading a manga, nothing more, as his friend slings an arm around him with a knowing grin. His buddy snickers, asking if it was erotic, and Masaki shrieks that he'd never read something like that in the middle of class right as a girl with long black hair passes close enough to hear, making his stomach drop. They both glance back at the silent girl walking away, her ellipsis-filled presence heavy, while their footsteps echo awkwardly down the corridor. Masaki asks if that long-haired girl was Saika Agatsuma from the other class, and his friend casually confirms it, calling her Jimiko like it's nothing. In Masaki's mind, Saika's lonely figure fills the frame as his friend explains she's always by herself and gives off that gloomy vibe everyone labels Jimiko, leaving Masaki to quietly murmur that he sees while the weight of that nickname hangs between them. Masaki hides his burning face while his friend casually asks if he's into Jimiko, forcing him to admit her features are balanced yet troubling. Watching Saika's back retreat down the corridor, they shiver that she seems to ooze some kind of darkness with every step. Sweat beating, Masaki awkwardly agrees that Jimiko is a girl with barely any presence and a heavy, gloomy aura, but his gaze drops to the swell under her blazer, and he thrills that his expert eyes can sense the impressive breasts straining against that plain uniform. In his mind, she's suddenly bound and half-naked, and he lusts over how insanely erotic it would be to expose the hidden chest of such a shy girl. He tells himself old wisdom says quiet girls are the kinkiest, yet grimaces that he'll have to bide his time for another opening. Later, Asaka squeezes his head into her chest and gently asks if it feels good while he melts, thinking the softness robs him of speech. Eyes closed in bliss against her body, he listens as she murmurs that he's actually her greatest source of comfort. Panting into her breasts, he admits that whenever Asaka embraces him like this, Hanma vanishes from his mind completely. Surrounded by visions of Hanma the Ice Queen and Saika, the hidden breast Jimiko, he swears that every time he sees them he makes new secret vows while nestled in Asaka's arms. Asaka's lips tighten as she repeats the unfamiliar name Hanma, and a faint chill creeps into her tone. Before he can react, she clamps him even harder to her chest, his muffled ha, swallowed by flesh and shock. Holding his head there with relentless softness, she presses in and quietly demands to know who that person is. From a distance, he's shown kneeling and smothered, mind screaming that he can't breathe under the crushing weight of her breasts. Later, he forces a crooked smile, sweating as he dodges with a shaky, "It's nothing," while wondering in panic what reckless words he blurted during that hug. Facing him with a blank look, Asaka's eyes seem to cool over completely, and he feels a stab of dread at the chill in her stare. Checking the familiar image of her on the app, he notes nothing has changed in the settings and nervously questions whether his fear is just paranoia. He awkwardly thanks her for today and orders her back to class, sweat betraying how unsure he is about giving even that simple command. She answers with a calm, "Got it," her expression unreadable as the obedience suddenly feels more mechanical than warm. Left alone on the empty stage, he frowns and wonders what that strange mood was, reminding himself that the hypnosis should still be binding her. Walking home with a friend, he listens to plans for the arcade while only humming back, lost in his own calculations. He finally waves goodbye, explaining his phone and backup battery are nearly dead, and decides to head straight home instead. On the way, he stops in front of a familiar house and falls silent, something unspoken tugging at him. Realizing this is the street where Asaka lives, he mutters that her place should be right around here. Staring up at her window, he feels a distant ache and thinks it's been ages since he last stood in that private room. Sighing as he walks past, he tells himself Asaka seems better now and that he no longer needs to keep worrying about her. But angry shouts of "Get out and listen to me" jolt him, and he spots a confrontation erupting just ahead. Recognizing the furious man cornering Asaka, he sees that the bastard is still harassing her and clearly hasn't learned a thing. Smiling with eyes closed yet voice hard, he decides that disturbing Asaka's fragile recovery is unforgivable and that he has no choice but to act. Feeling his phone vibrate in his hand, he glances down with a wary as the next move and its cost hangs in the air. He screams that his battery is almost dead, cursing himself for forgetting at the worst possible time. Clutching his phone with a pounding heart, he admits he can't rely on the Hypnosis app and wonders what he could even do if he goes now. The ex-boyfriend sweats and mutters that he might just end up pathetic and unable to do anything. Misaki strides in declaring that just knowing someone is on her side will change everything, while the girl blurts in disbelief that the underwear runner is suddenly worried about her, and the ex explodes, demanding what the hell he just said. Glowering down at Misaki, the ex snarls "You," as Asaka gasps "Misaki-kun," in startled confusion. Trying to sound calm, Misaki says he saw her on his way home and tells her to stay behind him even if he can't help much, while she shakily asks what he is doing here. The ex leans in with a cold "Hey," demanding to know who Misaki thinks he is for sticking his nose into this business. Throwing his arms wide, the ex orders Misaki to get lost because he's talking to Matsuri, trying to shove him out of the scene. Misaki's eyes sharpen as he says the ex actually had the nerve to come see Asaka after humiliating himself like that. Face twisting with rage, the ex barks "Shut the hell up," through gritted teeth. His mouth tight, he growls that ever since meeting Misaki everything has gone to hell and blames him for butting in. Arms crossed, Misaki retorts that the ex did that stupid stunt on his own and shouldn't blame him, though he admits he was the one who made the call. Grabbing Misaki by the collar, the ex spits that this piece of trash shouldn't get full of himself and demands to know why he's getting between him and Matsuri. Misaki answers that he's just her classmate and that seeing some creep bother her is reason enough to interfere. Eyes wide, the ex shouts that Matsuri hates shady guys like Misaki more than anything. Yanking Misaki up, he snarls that he'll beat him down again so he learns his place and should get ready to hit the ground like the loser he is. A footstep cuts in with a quiet "Hey," breaking the charged moment. Asaka's hand slaps across the ex's face as she tells him that's enough, leaving both boys frozen. Staring him down, she declares that whatever they had is over and they're not childhood friends anymore, while he stammers in shock that she's taking Misaki's side now. Holding up her phone, she warns that she's stayed silent about his ridiculous secrets until now, but if he keeps bothering her, she'll expose everything with proof, making him jerk back in alarm. Turning away in shame, he trudges off while she warns that if he ever lays a hand on Misaki-kun, she'll never forgive him. Misaki and Asaka watch his shrinking back in heavy silence as the confrontation finally drains away. When Misaki dazedly laughs that he just got distracted, she bends toward him with worried eyes asking if he's okay. Standing before the window, she softly calls "Hey Misaki-kun" and asks if he already knew about her ex-boyfriend. Misaki looks aside and says that just now that guy had been talking about her, bracing for her reaction. Sweating in the dark, he mutters, while thinking he'd already figured things might come to this. Her back turned but voice steady, she says there's a lot she wants to ask him and calls "Hey" again, not letting him escape. Glancing over her shoulder with a small smile, she asks if it's okay to question him like this. On a quiet park bench, he apologizes to Asaka, saying he probably wasn't very helpful at all. With a gentle blush, she tells him not to say that and admits she was really happy, her eyes soft with fragile relief. Misaki stiffens under Asaka's serious gaze as she quietly asks how much he truly knows, pressing him to expose what he's been hiding. Sweating and choosing his words, he explains he only noticed a scar when her sleeve slipped, insisting he saw it purely by accident while thinking he can't reveal everything. She listens with a soft "I see," while he admits he'd rather be honest yet struggles to dodge any mention of the Hypnosis app. Over the park's lamplight she recalls how they barely knew each other back then, how he kept wondering about her scar, but chose to do nothing for fear of making her uncomfortable. Her calm face hides old hurt, as she describes overhearing girls' gossip, while her ex sneered that he wouldn't care if Matsuri disappeared, words no one should ever say about a person. On the bench, he looks down and confesses that before he realized it, he had marched straight up to that guy. He remembers the ex snarling he'd beat him down again, so he'd learn his place, right before actually punching him. Asaka lowers her eyes and murmurs that it must have hurt, sympathy softening her profile. Masaki puffs himself up with a strained grin, admitting it hurt a little but bragging he wears the blow like a badge of honor. He then glosses over the rest, saying he has no idea why the ex ended up running half-naked through town, even though he was the one who gave that humiliating order. With an apologetic tilt of his head he tells her that's everything he knows, thinking it should be enough of an explanation. Leaning toward him with worried eyes, Asaka apologizes instead, saying she never imagined he'd get dragged into such trouble because of her. On the bench he flails in panic, insisting she doesn't need to apologize and blaming himself for butting in, while his thoughts race in terror that she isn't even hypnotized right now. Her fingers clutch his thigh as she quietly notes he put himself in danger for her sake, the touch sending a jolt through him. Then she beams with dazzling warmth, thanking him and asking to at least show her gratitude properly. Masaki's chibi form trembles as he stammers "oh," inner narration whining that her smile shines so brightly he can't even look straight at it. He steadies himself and says the ex is no longer a threat, but begs her to promise she'll never hurt herself over that guy again. Her hands fold together as she vows she won't, whispering never again and softly thanking Masaki-kun. In her memory, the ex looms over her, griping that Masaki looked down on him and acted like she'd obey whatever he wanted. Back in the present, she sits beside Masaki and quietly agrees that's why the ex showed up today. With a playful wink and raised finger, she assures him the creep won't return since he definitely doesn't want any more bizarre rumors spreading around. Their feet line up on the pavement as Masaki promises to help whenever she has problems, while she blushes that she's always relying on him and thanks him once more. Leaning close with flushed cheeks, she asks if there's anything he wants her to do for him, anything at all, catching him completely off guard. His face erupts crimson as he repeats the question in disbelief, mind racing over what he could possibly ask her to do. In a chibi frenzy, he stomps in place, insisting he can't demand something indecent right now, even though she just offered herself so openly. Spirals in his eyes, he frets that he can't waste this chance, but it has to be a wholesome request, while her voice softly calls his name. Then, she leans forward with a sultry smile and straight up asks if he wants to touch her boobs, as his hand freezes mid-reach. His brain blanks into deadpan mode, internally echoing her outrageous offer. "Do you want to touch my boobs?" like a broken record. Snapping back in horror, he realizes she isn't even under hypnosis and yells inside that this is happening of her own free will. Heart pounding, he stares at her serene, inviting smile as she gently guides his arm toward her chest, dragging him past the last line of his restraint. Her cleavage fills his vision while his thoughts snarl that she's begging for it and looking unbearably sexy, pushing his restraint to the edge. He jerks back with a panicked yell of "Wait, stop," flailing to halt her as she calmly reaches for him. With a slow, disarming tilt of her head, she asks if he isn't obsessed with her boobs, acting like his desire should be obvious. Face blazing and mouth hanging open, he stammers that it's not like he doesn't want to, clawing for an excuse that won't come. She smiles and declares that makes everything fine while he sweats and cries that it's absolutely not fine at all. Leaning in so close he can feel her breath, she tells him to stop overreacting while he babbles that he doesn't really mind, just can't handle how intense this is. In a chibi spiral of panic, he clutches his head and wonders if he's just a coward or simply too inexperienced to cope with her aggressive advances. When she bluntly asks if he's ever touched breasts before, he leaps up, shouting that of course he hasn't and that he's never even had a girlfriend. Buried against her chest, he flushes as he admits he's rubbed on them plenty under hypnosis, yet reels because this time she's the one begging for it. She beams that his inexperience makes this perfect, while he screams back that nothing about this feels perfect to him. Dead-eyed but honest, he says he already knows very well how soft and wonderful breasts are, even without taking her up on it. Staring at the straining fabric over her chest, he curses himself for rejecting her when she's literally telling him she wants it. Cold sweat dripping, he realizes in horror that without hypnosis, he has no idea how to handle a willing girl at all. He remembers he could do anything he wanted when she was under the app's spell, yet mutters that none of that prepared him for a real conscious Asaka calling his name. Her chest bounces invitingly as she urges him not to hold back, leaving him wide-eyed and choking on his own desire. Grabbing her hands, he blurts that he's a guy, so of course he's interested, yet insists this situation is completely different and terrifying. Her eyes soften as she says she just likes his usual energetic self and that's all she needs, quietly shifting the mood from lust to something deeper. He looks away and warns she shouldn't toss herself into things like this so easily, guilt cutting through his arousal. She laughs with pink cheeks, saying she's not that easy and that it's only because it's him, while he groans that her smile is downright unfair and mumbles he understands. As they walk under the street lamp, she murmurs that he's really kind, and he protests it isn't true even as those words sink into him. He sighs that he only backed off because he's a wimp, then notes it's getting dark and suggests they head home, while she quietly agrees. Side by side in the neighborhood dusk, she thanks him for walking her home, and he casually answers that he'll see her tomorrow. Stopping at her door with a shy grin, she asks if he'd mind talking with her more from now on, exposing a need that goes beyond teasing. Thumbs up and smiling, he says he definitely doesn't mind since they're classmates, trying to hide how giddy her request makes him. As she heads inside with a bright thanks, "See you, Masaki-kun," her fading steps leave him alone in a soft, echoing silence. Later that night, she curls up on her bed, hugging a cushion, the dark room shrinking around the warmth of her secret thoughts. Clutching the pillow tighter, she whispers Masaki's name and tells herself he's the one who saved her, letting that belief steady her heart. In a hazy flashback, she remembers people joking about a guy who once ran through town in his underwear, wondering how that same boy can now be so worried over her. Snuggled into her cushion, she blushes and admits to herself that his voice relaxes her more than anything. Eyes drifting to the clock on her wall, she murmurs that lately he keeps appearing in her dreams, the slow ticking turning her quiet longing into something inescapable. Glittering darkness swirls around the words as a girl quietly confesses she keeps having a dream about a boy. In that hazy vision, she clings to the memory of a boy whose constant care and gentle voice seem to lift every burden from her shoulders. Her dream boy blushes as she admits to herself that he's obviously curious about doing indecent things. Yet in the same breath, she giggles that he turns adorably useless whenever embarrassment overwhelms him, making her want to pamper him. Hugging that dream version of him tight, she insists that even in sleep, she would never let some unknown man touch her body. Still, she whispers that his touch never feels wrong at all. It feels strangely healing, like it eases every wound inside her. Lying in bed with a stuffed rabbit, she gazes upward and says she treasures those dream moments with him even if the details keep slipping away. Her thoughts then jump to reality as she admits the boy in those dreams talks and acts uncannily like Masaki-kun. Sprawled on the mattress, she squeezes her plush and murmurs that being with him, even just talking, makes her feel completely safe. Staring into the rabbit's stitched eyes, she wrestles with the fact it's only a dream, but wonders how she's supposed to ignore it when so much overlaps with real life. Blush rising, she lowers her lashes and quietly decides she wants to talk with Masaki far more than she already does. Words beat like a second heartbeat as she admits she's hungry to learn even more about him. The sign for Year 3 Class A comes into view as unseen footsteps race toward the classroom where that boy waits. Inside, Masaki turns at the sound of his name, just as a girl's hand thumps onto his desk to get his attention. He jolts toward a looming chest and hears a bright good morning, mentally screaming in shock that these breasts are practically speaking to him. Heart leaping, he blurts that she scared him, finally recognizing Asaka hovering over his seat. Face flushing, he laughs off her concern with a shaky "it's nothing," while privately rejoicing that he got to admire her cleavage this early and calling himself one lucky guy. In chibi space, she notes he seems oddly cheerful, and he stammers back that he really seems that way as his giddy mood leaks out. Leaning in with a teasing smile, she presses that he definitely does and urges him to spill what happened, while he internally screams that he can't admit it was a pervy stroke of luck. Crowding even closer, she cheerfully commands him to go on and tell her, leaving him blushing and wondering if this brazen warmth is what real closeness with a sunny girl feels like. He glances toward her friends calling Matsuri, and awkwardly points out they're summoning her, using it as an escape hatch. Waving as she trots off with a sing-song, "See you later, Masaki-kun," he stares after her and wonders whether he's somehow fallen into an actual rom-com. Later he clutches his head in a dark fog, bawling that he finally had a perfect chance and blew it, drowning in regret over telling her he only needed her usual energetic self. Her smiling memory floats before him, repeating her bold question about touching her boobs, and he despairs that she offered all that on her own and that such a miracle will never repeat. Slumped alone at his desk in a black void, he groans that he's starting to despise his own pathetic weakness. Jaw set and phone in hand, he decides if that's how it is then he has to toughen up by hypnotizing even more girls, building his mental stamina step by guilty step. Staring at the heart-shaped icon, he vows to walk the path of full degeneracy and become the kind of guy who never lets an opportunity slip past. Breaking into a shaky grin, he mutters that he'll fire up the app after school, eyes gleaming with corrupted resolve. The school bell rings over the rooftop as time slides toward the moment he plans to cross another line. Down in the hallway, he finally spots Saika Agatsuma shuffling alone, the so-called Jimiko, whose heavy silence makes her almost invisible as he stalks toward his next target. He fixates on Saika's swaying chest like buried loot and vows that today he'll finally dig up that overwhelming treasure. He scans the empty hallway with predatory calm, satisfied that no one is around to witness what he's about to try. Lurking at the top of the stairs behind her, he steels himself and decides all he has to do is open the app and strike. A cheery notification ding pops onto his phone, shattering the tension the moment his plan begins. He yelps as the sound blasts through the quiet corridor, cursing himself for forgetting the volume and fumbling in panic. His fingers miss and the phone flips away from him, horror surging as he realizes his lifeline is slipping from his grasp. The device clatters down the steps towards Saika, and her blank, glinting eyes follow its fall with an unreadable pause. Standing at the bottom, she silently stares at the phone lying near her feet, the air thick with awkward stillness. Masaki rushes down, calling her name, sweating as he apologizes and anxiously asks if she's okay. Seeing the heart icon screen flashing, he freezes in terror, realizing he dropped it with the Hypnosis app still open and exposed. Saika quietly picks up the glowing phone as his heartbeat thunders from above, every second stretching his dread. She calmly hands it back with a simple "here," while he forces out a thanks and inwardly gasps in relief that she shows no hint of suspicion. Watching her walk away, he falls silent and admits to himself that her presence really is strangely distinct. Her turned back radiates a frigid aura that warns people to keep their distance, making her seem impossibly hard to approach. Face flushing with twisted excitement, he decides that icy barrier means nothing to him and only fuels his obsession. Sweat beating at his neck, he licks his lips and murmurs that it is time to try his wicked experiment on her one more time. He jogs up calling Agatsuma, while brandishing the phone, heart racing as he moves to pull her into his web. From another angle she slowly turns, eyes widening at the sight of him and the raised phone, the device's lens glinting like a threat. Blushing and shaking, he addresses Agatsuma by name and shamelessly asks her to slide her arms underneath her breasts for him. She complies without protest, lifting and framing her chest as he marvels aloud at how shockingly huge they become under her own support. Watching her vacant obedience, he smiles nervously and mutters that it worked, confirming she is now completely under hypnosis. Trying to sound casual, he asks her to move around behind him, already savoring the indecency he is about to demand. Staring at the screen instead of her face, he adds that after she gets there, he wants her to hug him tightly from behind. She answers with a flat okay and steps in, her chest pressing close as the spiral emblem gleams over her heart. When her arms wrap around him, he screams inside at the massive weight of her breasts on his back, stunned by how enormous they feel. Feeling them squish and shift against him, he even wonders in delirium if these hidden curves might outsize Asaka's legendary chest. Clinging to her side while still held in that embrace, he apologetically blurts out a question about her cup size, unable to contain his perversion. His own face turns dreamily erotic as he basks in the lewdness of the situation, convinced that what he is doing now is absolutely eki. Her soft answer F-cup echoes alongside his memory of Asaka saying the same, and he compares their volumes with greedy, analytical awe. Staring at the vast swell under her blazer, he thrills that these unbelievable assets have been hidden from the world so long it practically feels like a crime. Hard-eyed and sweating, he practically howls that he can't hold himself back anymore, surrendering to the lust pounding in his chest. Holding up his phone like a warrant, he bluntly asks if her parents are home, and when she answers no, his inner voice erupts with a gleeful grate. Staring straight ahead with that unreadable calm, she accepts his suggestion to go to her place, agreeing with a muted okay that tightens the air between them. An anonymous apartment block looms over the street, a silent witness to whatever they're about to do inside. Stepping out of their shoes in the entryway, he nervously gawks that this is Agatsuma's house while she walks ahead in heavy silence. As she leads him down the hallway alone, narration notes the house is empty but her quiet back still radiates that chilling aura. His face tight, he tells himself nothing about her has really changed and wonders if he's just imagining the unease gnawing at him. Glancing over her shoulder with half-lidded eyes, she simply tells him to come in, inviting him into her private room. He surveys the neat, plain bedroom and thinks it's way cleaner than his, maybe so spotless it feels almost sterile. His gaze drifts along the bookshelf and he notes there's nothing girly at all, only serious volumes lined up like a wall. Studying her cool profile, he admits he can't picture this girl owning cute trinkets anyway, branding her whole vibe as relentlessly plain. Staring at the clock, he reminds her she said her parents aren't home and carefully asks when they're coming back. With eyes hidden in shadow, she answers that she doesn't know, probably late, the uncertainty hanging between them. Trying to sound casual as he grips his phone, he says, I see, and trails off with a loaded in that case that betrays his intent. Face flushing with predatory focus, he thinks he should hurry and just do it as he stammers out a request for Agatsuma to take off her clothes. Gasping and drenched in sweat, he reels that he actually said it out loud, his own boldness frightening him. As her buttons strain and pop under the swelling fabric, he admits that even after doing this with Asaka, this level of lewdness still makes him tremble. Her shirt stretches to its limit around monstrous curves, and he internally screams how huge they are, marveling that the buttons are even surviving. Blushing and hunched over his phone, he forces out that she should now remove her skirt and shirt, pushing the command to the next stage. Fabric pulls at her feet with a soft slap as he yelps Agatsuma-san, stunned by how quickly she sheds her uniform. Looking at her shadowed face, he blurts that he got so carried away he didn't notice something important at first, dread starting to eclipse arousal. His eyes drop to the dark marks on her thigh, and he nervously asks what those bruises are, while she echoes these, like it's nothing. Standing there in her blouse with a distant gaze, she calmly explains that sometimes her father hits or kicks her, the confession landing like a gut punch. Staggering back from her in shock, he realizes she too carries a painful reason for him to stop, his perverted resolve colliding with the cruelty she endures.